Council meeting to order. Attendance is everyone here, Mayor Herron, Councillor Bemansky online, and Councillor Jolly is, everyone's not here. Councillor Jolly is absent, Mayor Herron and Councillor Bemansky are online, and myself and all the gentlemen are in person. Adoption of the agenda. Go ahead, Ken.
That the February 11th, 2025 agenda be adopted as presented.
Okay, I'll just call for the vote.
Yes.
Mayor, you're in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, so the first item is the quarterly report.
Thank you very much. That's not right. Oh, that's me. So there's all sorts of ways to mess this up.
It's okay.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair, Council. I'm here to present the Q4 2024 quarterly report. As you're well aware, the quarterly report communicates progress in your strategic plan and provides an update on the financial position of the city specific to the quarter in which it was produced. So what we're talking about is the last quarter of last year. Council's strategic plan outlines the what, and through things like the corporate business plan, we outline the how your priorities will be advanced within planned initiatives. While not included in the quarterly updates, the day-to-day delivery of services remains defined in Council's service level inventory. And that is because the focus of your strategic plan and your corporate business plan is on significant change over time as the city grows and evolves. It's important to note that the progress on initiatives outlined in this report as of 31st of December last year, or is as of, and work has continued between then. I apologize, I should turn my camera on.
It's a very nice main slide though.
Thank you very much. Well, it is a beautiful picture if you. I apologize to everyone who has to look at me now, but the work has continued between the end of the quarter and today, and this will not be reflected in the report outside of some editorial comments at all. I'll begin with an update on progress related to your strategic plan. We continue to advance your strategic priorities and address current and future needs of your community. Overall, 47 initiatives have been planned to advance your strategic plan, and you can see the numbers, so I won't read them to you. Over the next few slides, I'll provide an overview of each progress category linked specifically to each of your strategic priorities. The active initiatives under the Economic Prosperity Strategic Priority 4 remain on track. 2 are completed and were completed actually prior to this quarter. And 2 projects were planned to start this year or in future years. I'll focus in on a couple. Lakeview Business District Servicing. On the 15th of October, 2024, you approved Capital Project Charter PNGS 085, the Lakeview Business District Servicing Project. This scope includes new alignment and design for Range Road 260 and Meadowview Drive, underground utilities and a sanitary lift station and force main infrastructure. The project is estimated at $62.7 million, which includes a 25% contingency, with roughly $47.7 million or 76%, recoverable through the offsite levy collections and $15 million as non-offsite leviable costs. Funding has been secured through the borrowing bylaw 26/2024, which includes a 25% borrowing contingency for a total of $78.375 million after third reading took place on the 21st of January this year. Additionally, $7.5 million, or roughly 50% of the OSL costs, have been requested through the Provincial Local Growth and Sustainability Grant. Looking now at regional and sub-regional economic development, key milestones for the Collaborative Economic Development Project include the development of the CED framework document, finalization of the Memorandum of Understanding between partner municipalities, and funding commitment letter for 2025 implementation. Finalized MOU supporting ongoing CED participation will be circulated to CED partners in early 2025 and presented to Council for consideration in Q1 2025. That initial discussion amongst membership municipalities at the CAO level is scheduled in the next few weeks. St. Albert West Area Structure Plan and Neighborhood Plan was approved by Council in September of 2024. We are now developing neighborhood plans for the city-owned Badger Lands and Lakeview with an initial forecast timeline out to 31st March 2025. The new land use bylaw 18/2024 was approved on the 15th of October of last year, and changes to the master rates bylaw based on the new land use bylaw were approved by Council on the 17th of December. Next steps include uploading the interactive LUB on the City of St. Albert website, updating infill and urban design review guidelines, and revising website content, brochures, and development permit conditions to align with the new land use bylaw, as well as updates to internal systems for new land uses. Projects planned to advance downtown vibrancy have been completed in previous quarters. A Millennium Park Development Initiative was stopped as per council's direction. Discussions continue on supporting our downtown business association and examining operational level opportunities over the short term. The active initiatives under the community well-being priority, 3 are on track, 1 is delayed, and progress on 6 were completed in previous quarters. Advancing mixed market housing development. The Alberta Affordable Housing Partnership Program, which is super easy to say, request for proposal process opened on the 22nd of November of 2024 and closes on the 31st of January 2025. Administration continues to collaborate with Homeland Housing to prepare the funding application, including providing letters of support, coordinating with community partners on supportive tenant services, and updating the provincial housing needs assessment data. And I believe that Homeland Housing is either very clear or has actually, I believe they've actually submitted their proposal to the province. The AHPP offers up to $150 million in funding across Alberta with a maximum provincial contribution of 30% per project. Administration continues to assist and advocate for development of coordination, government advocacy, and completing the conveyance and buyback agreements. Community amenities planning is ongoing and progressing on schedule with on-site technical studies, a functional program study, and a partnership opportunity study. Next steps include completing site technical studies and a rough grading plan with updated project costs provided as necessary based on the technical study findings. Council will be briefed on the results of these studies towards the end of Q1 2025. The Colborne Institute for Inclusive Leadership at Norquest College, in collaboration with administration, has advanced the initial phase of the IDEA, Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility Strategy project. Completed activities include an employee experience survey, focus group sessions with leadership team, interviews with executive leadership, a review of policies and procedures, website accessibility assessments, external and VINE, and stakeholder interviews, benchmarking with other municipalities with DEI strategies, and data analysis by the CIIL. External engagement involved interviews with stakeholders connected to family and community support services and Indigenous relations. Finally, project planning is progressing for a reconciliation action plan Indigenous framework, which is effectively a roadmap to implement the Pehonan report to be drafted in 2025. This will guide future establishment of an advisory entity and frame staff efforts and initiatives moving forward. Ongoing efforts include continued relationship building with First Nations and Métis partners, communities, and neighbors. Projects planned to advance adapting to a changing natural environment priority were completed prior to Q4 of 2024. Implementation of the Green Environment Strategy at the operational level remains ongoing. The Resilient Infrastructure Strategy is scheduled to start in 2025. The active initiatives under your financial stability priority, 4 are on track, 1 delayed, 10 completed, and 6 planned to start in 2025 or later. Focusing in on the long-term debt strategy, the project team prepared a presentation for the 2025 Council Strategic Planning session and refined the debt model. Additionally, a questionnaire for an electronic scan of off-site levy policies of comparable municipalities was developed and the outreach to these municipalities completed. The asset management team completed the evaluations and demonstrations on the Enterprise Maintenance Management Asset Management software in early October of last year. Procurement negotiations are planned for February of this year, with stage 1 implementation beginning in April. This software is expected to enhance the mature asset management program. As capacity became available in Q4 of last year, the asset management team updated our governance structure. Approximately 37% the governance structure for tactical asset management plans has been completed. That's more than approximately, that's pretty specific. A phased approach has been adopted, with the first phase focusing on reviewing and updating the Asset Management Council policy and the second involving the development of our strategy and strategic plan. The asset management presentation to Council is again planned for late 2020 or Q1 of 2025. Our digitization directive has been approved and published with related procedural documents drafted. A review of the city's Microsoft environment to identify unused SharePoint and Teams sites was completed. Strategies for applying proper record-keeping retentions have been documented and communicated to employees with cleanups efforts planned throughout the new year. The project team has launched the Goods and Services Training module as part of the procurement audit implementation, and it will equip stakeholders with procurement best practices. Drafts of the purchasing process, including standardized protocols and directives, have been completed with super users engaged to identify gaps. And finally, 2 sub-teams were formed to manage engagement with internal and external stakeholders looking at modernizing the city's budget through multi-year budgeting. Both teams developed questionnaires to evaluate the current state and gather feedback on multi-year budgeting more holistically. Several meetings with municipalities have been conducted, with additional meetings scheduled through Q1 of 2025. This concludes the update on your strategic priority progress, and now I'll present our financial summary for Q4 of 2024.
Everybody comfortable just moving forward? Now, Dan? Okay,
Can I ask a quick question of Bill?
go ahead, Mayor.
Bill, maybe this is an in-camera conversation, but regional transit is something you've been working on this quarter? And the application to the federal government for funding, is that an in-camera conversation?
No, I don't believe it is, Councillor. It's not reflected on the council plan because it's, on the corporate business plan, right, based on where it sits out right now. But by way of a very quick update, the expression of interest for application for regional transit funding out of the Permanent Transit Fund at the federal level has been completed. Excuse me. It's been submitted to the province for review, and ultimately it's the province charged with the onward transmission under the auspices of our relationship. The province has yet to submit that EOI, and that's where we currently sit in terms of that component of it. Collaboration continues on optimizing actual transit operations through the technical working group in the meantime. Does that answer your question, Mayor?
Yeah, just you and I talked and I expressed my frustration that the province was not applying for those funds, or had not yet, and question if they even would, and that's just more dollars left on the table. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I don't know what their intentions are. Certainly the indications, we've not received a timeline, I guess, of our engagements at the public service level. And so ultimately, how the province is positioning themselves in terms of, I guess, more holistically, the relationship federally in light of prorogation of Parliament and a future election, and also the potential for provincial liabilities in terms of matching funds, I think are considerations at play, and we don't know what that's.
Okay, any other questions? All right, keep on going.
As of December 2024, $218.4 million in operating revenue was recognized, which is $6.3 million above what we budgeted. $207.5 million in operating expenses occurred, which was $4.5 million below what we budgeted. The $10.8 million surplus this year is primarily due to an increase in permitting revenue and subdivision fees due to very strong development and growth. Higher net interest revenue due to higher than anticipated Bank of Canada interest rates. The results primarily of the revised ambulance contract with AHS, RCMP contract savings related to vacant positions, and to a lesser degree, salary savings from vacancies within city departments, and future forecasting and savings in contracted services. This chart identifies the progress status of all municipal capital projects. At the end of the year, 94 of the 158 municipal capital projects were in progress or completed, with 42 closed total. Details of the projects requested to be carried into 2025 are presented in the operating and capital carryforwards and completed projects agenda report. For the utilities budget, as of December 2024, the city recognized $50.4 million in revenue and $35.9 million in expenses. The $464,000 of reduced revenue is a combination of lower wastewater service charges due to system water losses not factored into projected wastewater volume and wastewater rates, offset by higher water connection fees due to the development growth more holistically, sorry. The $1,359,000 lower expenses are due to lower contracted services, costs, and solid waste due to favorable contract renewal terms. The water budget purchase rate from EPCOR being lower than budgeted. Salary vacancies offset by higher wastewater treatment costs and a one-time electricity charges incurred from the Henday Booster Station. This has resulted in a $0.9 million higher than budgeted transfer to reserves. This chart identifies the progress on status of all utilities capital projects. In total, 84% of the 55 projects are in progress or completed, with 10 projects being closed off. Details of these projects requested to be carried forward in 2025 are presented in the operating capital carryforwards and completed projects agenda report. In summary, for 2024, the city had a surplus of $10.8 million. With strong investments, reserve funding and debt below city limits, the city continues to maintain a strong financial position while maintaining high levels of service to residents and advancing strategic priorities as identified in council's strategic plan. This concludes my presentation, and obviously, between myself and more importantly, some of the experts here, we're happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions? Nothing so far? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Mansky.
Thank you for administration. There was a paragraph on page number 27 that there was higher 521 higher salary costs by transferring staff from waste and storm to water. Can you just clarify what that meant exactly?
It's reading online. Please.
Slowly coming, sorry.
Just waiting for, yeah, there he is. Okay, Regan's online. Thank you, Councillor.
Sure.
Go ahead, Regan. Yeah.
So staff get allocated according to the various accounts that they're in, but also based on projects. So when we do work for Public Works, we'll charge a work order to Public Works. Some of our staff in water will also charge work orders to wastewater, and our wages and salaries move around depending on those work orders. So the allocations can get allocated differently depending on what various projects we're working on for the year.
Okay,
So as you can see, wastewater is $424,000 lower in salaries and benefits, and stormwater is $180,000 lower as well. So that offsets. Water is higher, and wastewater and stormwater are lower. So
okay,
it balances out between the three utilities.
okay, and that's just something you commonly do then.
Yes.
Okay, appreciate it. Just want clarification. Thank you.
Any questions? I had a couple. So again, we'll get to stay on that same page in utilities. So the water losses not being factored into budgeted sale of water, it's the 244,000. I'm just wondering, Regan, was this an anomaly, or should?
I actually think that's incorrect. The 244,000 is we didn't sell as much water as we were expecting. We had fully included water losses in our water budget. We hadn't accounted for them in the wastewater budget though, for 2024. So.
Okay, so it's just the wastewater that actually, so it should actually say less than water revenue, I guess.
Correct. I apologize.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, and then the wastewater, again, is there a reason for I actually had the water, is it just because the two tie together, or what's with the wastewater that you just mentioned?
So water loss is there's a certain percentage of water that is lost between the master meter at the city boundary. So we buy water from EPCOR, as everybody knows, and we don't sell the same volume of water. We buy about 5.5 million cubic meters of water, and we don't sell 5.5 million cubic meters of water. So there needs to be a difference, and it's around 7%. So about 7% of the water is lost between those master meters at the city boundary, and then when you add up all the individual meters at customers' homes, and it's things like water leaks, leaks in the system. It's water used to fight fires, water used for flushing. There's a lot of unmetered uses. A lot of them are municipal, and those need to be distributed amongst the customers. Wastewater has a similar issue. Arrow Utilities charges us for wastewater for all the wastewater treatment based on the amount of water that's coming into the community. And again, we sell less water to the individual residents and businesses than what we purchase. So there ends up being a difference. And so the water loss affects not just the water budget, but it also affects the wastewater budget. We need to add an additional 7% to what we're charging customers over and above what we're getting charged by these external providers.
Are we already doing that though? So this is above and beyond what you were already budgeting, right?
We were not allocating that. We were balancing for other various reasons, and this is something that as we get more refined in our budgeting, it's something that we need to fully account for. So yeah, we're getting more and more detailed and refined in other places, and I think we had some contingency built into the budget that is no longer there. So we need to get more accurate on things like this. And 7% of 5.5 million cubic meters times $2.05 a cubic meter is a significant amount of money, and we need to fully account for that within the wastewater budget.
So would we be expecting the rates to increase next year then?
the rates are increasing for wastewater for next year to fully account for this in wastewater. Yes,
And then,
that's already been built into the current 2025 budget. So in the current rates.
oh, okay, so it's already in there.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not for 2026 as well. The 100
Oh, no,
under
it's
expense,
yeah. Sorry, it's in there for 2026 as well. Yeah, it's going forward. This is something that we need to account for. Sorry.
the $100,000 higher for one-time electricity charges incurred from Penn Day Booster Station. Just seems,
So that's a facility that was built in 2017, and council is, as I'm sure aware, we transferred that back to the original developer that had built that facility because we had deemed it to be redundant, no longer necessary to provide fire protection for the area. As part of that review, both ourselves and the developer identified that we weren't paying the electricity charges. We were paying the natural gas charges, but for whatever reason, the electricity account had not transferred over to the city when that facility transferred over to the city. Natural gas had, so it was an oversight. I'm not sure if it was on the city's part or if it was on the developer's part. Probably a bit of both. But as part of the negotiations for the transfer of that facility, they asked that we pick up the charges going back to 2017. And they had records. They had records for the electricity payments that they'd made for the facility. We'd been using the electricity to operate the facility, but it was a bit of a miss. So it's a one-time correction or a one-time charge that we've compensated the devever for that.
yeah,
So
I'm sure you keep receipts if it's for 100 grand. You want to keep
they
that.
did. They had the receipts.
Yeah.
So yes.
I can see that happening. Okay, what do we have? Sorry, I'm now, should have two files open right now. Are there any other questions? Okay, is there a motion associated with this? There must be.
This was
Information.
information.
Okay, that's-
This is germane, obviously.
Okay, so if there's no other questions, we'll just move on to the next part of the agenda item. So the next one is the preliminary year-end surplus and reserve transfer. Oh, no, operating carry forward, sorry.
Yeah.
Wish it, we're already back there. Operating carry forwards, let's do it.
Suzanne Finley's presenting the operating capital carry forwards. Completed
Thank you.
program.
So, we have no formal presentation here, for the operating carry forwards, but, as part of our annual process, we look through all of the operating capital, initiatives that need to be carried forward or need to be closed, and then, we, ask for council approval. So, as noted, we are going to be carrying forward, we have 384 million in our capital, which includes a 2.3 million net budget decrease. And then the residual balances in the 24 municipal capital closed projects in the amount of 17.2 provided as the attachment be uncommitted and transferred to their respective funding sources. The 224 utility capital carried forward in the 110.9 million be approved, and the residual balances remaining in the 224 utility capital projects be uncommitted within their respective reserves. And that the 224 municipal and utility operating carry forward amount of 4.9 million be approved. And then that the reserve balances be updated to reflect the realized savings from those operating projects that are no longer going to be, that the funding is no longer required. So we have staff in attendance. If you have any questions on them. Councillor McLean.
I just a real quick one, and I don't want to get into it because obviously I don't want to go into camera, but the Campbell Park and ride, when you show a $2.4 million decrease in there, there's obviously litigation dollars. How is that reported? So we're showing a decrease and we're showing a decrease on the capital project, but then we obviously have expenses as it relates, and they don't even out, do they?
That's a good question. I can speak to the decrease, and then might have to take the legal offline, or Marta might have.
Well, I think in terms of reporting, how we report it, we can talk about that.
Okay. So the decrease is actually in regards to this project came in under budget.
Okay.
And so it was a product of two grants that we received. One was green trip funding. I think it's been under litigation for the last few years. And I think it's come to a resolution. as far as if there were legal costs, I think that would have to go through our operations, but I don't think we have any, I'm not sure what the overall payment on that.
Yeah,
might
no,
be.
I mean, I'm just trying to say, so I mean, we've taken it. Because it's not, if you look at the line item, it shows that it's capital expense and it's.
Yeah.
So we've had a decrease because of an in favor litigation,
Yeah,
but then we had to expend money in relation to litigating it. And is it a balance? Is it one's capital, one's operating, or how do we balance the scale on that?
that is a good question, and I don't know offhand, but if you wanted to put through an information request on it, I don't know the details of the actuals.
And Tim has a response too. He said it was all of capital was utilized, but Tim, did you want to step in?
Sure. Yeah, I could talk. So the litigation was ongoing. It was actually a challenge for delay claims, which is why we protected the remainder of the contract funding. And the fees included additional time with our consultants under the capital contract in order to be able to defend what we were being disputed against us. So the resolution came back in our favor, but it all did reside in that capital project funding.
Okay, so even litigation costs would have been.
They've yet to be finalized, but we don't need that funding. And Marta, jump in if I am not able to say, but we were favorable in obtaining some reimbursement of legal fees as well. So it will be only going to a positive side at this point.
I just didn't know what was in the capital out of that and what would be operating, but if it was, I mean, it was more of an interesting question to see where the corresponding balance was. That's all. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a general question. I'm trying to wrap my head around that some of these projects, as noted in like the 419 projects, they would have been approved in 2019. And so that's nearly 5 years ago for paved parking lot program or back lanes program. And we're just getting to them now. Is that extent of time normal that we would keep carrying projects over that long? Or is there any time where you just say they only get carried over for 5 years and then you have to reapply, like come back with a new capital charter? Or is it just seems very, very weird to me that we would carry projects that long.
And that is a great question. That is something like based on us having the ability to approve projects at 1 year at a time, they do take capital projects usually take quite a few years to come to timing and construction. Some of the design is included in that, but you are correct. There is some, at each point, we do review the carry forwards at each of the new budgets to say, has there been, say, some replacement programs that are in progress? And then do we still need those funds in each of the corresponding next budget years to take into account those carried forward capital projects? But of course, you can see some are closed when the scope and the work has either come to like this, we've done it and finished the work pertaining to that scope and area, we've closed it. But if there's still outstanding work, a lot of times we've tried to keep that open in order to close the work. And I maybe Donnie might or Dean might have particular further comments to elaborate on those specific programs you spoke to.
Thanks. And in particular to the back lane program through the Change of Council Killick, that is delayed specifically because we had to coordinate with the shallow utilities companies. So that was the major delay in pushing some of those back lane project forward. And also in addition to that, there is some coordination that's required for utilities project. If that was planned for, we purposely delayed a couple of them to catch up with the coordination efforts that's required for both utilities and shallows. Maybe I will pass on to Dean if you want to add specific any backlane program or even parking lot program that you had question on.
No, thank you very much, Donnie. You caught it bang on that in some of these areas with these projects, there is some delay in regards to influence and impact of coordinating with other capital projects. Beyond that, maybe some site constraints or additional considerations. So, but that pretty much was a bang on example. So.
So similar kind of question then on the second project in the capital project carry forward is a transit smart fare and smart bus, and it was approved in 2014. And looks like we haven't spent any money on that. It was approved at 3.6 or 3.9 and it's carried over for 3.9. But it says it's closed out in 2025. So
I can start with this and Mr. Saunders can. So actually we have spent, if you look at the actuals, we have spent 3.6 million of the 3.9 million. This was a project that was approved in 2014. However, my recollection is that it took a few years to actually get the project undergoing and to do with that, the smart fares, smart bus capital project. In addition, I think there were delays, and I don't know if it was through COVID. The project again was delayed for several years. So the smart fare is in place. We've got everything in place, but we just need to carry forward to finalize for 1 year. So while the project itself was approved in 2014, the collaboration with the city of Edmonton and I think there was working on them getting grants to help with it. That took several years before the project was even underway. I don't know if Mr. Saunders has any more to add to that.
No, through the chair to Councillor Killick, that was a very accurate representation. This is all work related to smart technology on the bus, the ARC card, which is in the final stages of implementation with final user groups as we are now, but much of the heavy lifting of the project has been completed up to now.
okay, no, I mean, there's just looks like, a lot of these projects have gone on and forever and ever and ever, and maybe they have for good reasons. That gives me a better understanding of okay, and that's a generic answer across a lot of them that were carried over for various reasons. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I just have a comment that we know you've been here a long time when everything looks familiar on this list. You're like, yeah, no, I remember proving that. Okay, so I think we have a motion. Who would like to bring it forward? Mayor, you haven't brought up anything forward and I want you to feel it included. So do you want to bring forward the motion?
Sure, no problem.
So moved.
Let me just get it. There we go. It's on screen so I can. Okay, so the 2024 municipal capital carry forward amount of 348.4 million, which includes a 2.3 million net budget decrease provided as attachment titled Municipal Capital Projects Carry Forward be approved, and that the residual balance remaining in the 2024 municipal capital closed projects in the amount of 17.2 million provided as attachment titled Municipal Capital Projects Closed be uncommitted within their respective funding sources. Oh, there's more. Thank you, Sheena. There's no Natalie to rattle these off. Okay, and that the 2024 utility capital carry forward amount of 110.9 million provided as attachment titled Utility Capital Projects Carry Forward be approved. That the residual balances remaining in the 2024 utility capital completed projects in the amount of 2.1 million provided as attachment titled Utility Capital Projects Closed be uncommitted within their respective funding sources, and that the 2024 municipal and operating carry forward in the amount of 4.9 million provided as attachment titled Operating Carry Forwards be approved. And finally, I think this is finally, that reserve balances be updated to reflect the realized net savings from completed municipal and utility operating projects provided as attachment titled Residual Balance of Completed Projects.
Before you say anything further, I had a quick question. So what is the updated capital with, if this system gets approved? What's the new uncommitted capital reserve balance? Do you know? I guess, because it probably wouldn't have reflected it in the next agenda item, right? Like that was not reflected in that.
Just give us a minute, we'll double check that.
That says 6,888,902.
But I think we were uncommitting 17 million, and quite a bit of it that would have been going back to capital.
Most of it was debt related.
Most of it was. Okay. You guys tell me when you know, okay? Mayor, do you have anything to say on this, or do you want to just go to the vote?
No, and go straight to a vote.
Okay, let's call for the vote.
Unanimous.
And you're yes, Mayor? Okay, perfect. Okay, that's unanimous. I'm not sure if that says pre-surplus though. Well, it's pre-surplus, but then I don't, that includes this item, because I don't think they could presuppose. Okay, you have it? You have our new update number? It's okay. Okay, so let's go to the last agenda item. When you have it, just call it. It's the preliminary year-end surplus and reserve transfer.
And Brenda Barclay is going to present.
Great, thank you. Don't have a formal presentation, just a verbal presentation. So good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. I'm here to present the city's 2024 preliminary year-end financial position, as well as to make recommendations for the distribution of the surplus. Throughout 2024, the city continued a fiscally responsible approach to its operations, which has put us in a strong financial position. The city is currently reporting, as you've heard, an estimated $10.8 million surplus, which is approximately 5% variance of the 2025 approved budget of $216 million. A detailed analysis of all the variances within each department can be found in the fourth quarter report, which was in today's agenda package. So administration is recommending transferring 60% of the surplus, or $6.5 million, to the stabilization reserve, with the remainder of the $4.3 million split equally between the capital reserve and the land and facilities reserve. If council would like to make an alternate recommendation for the surplus funds, administration asks that an amended motion be presented today so that we can finalize the surplus position for the year-end audit. Thank you, and I will take any questions.
If I could just quickly before questions, so still with a little while, I let the cat out of the bag, but I believe this is Brenda's last carry forward presentation with the city. So not an insignificant, as she looks to retire, so not an insignificant milestone. And I just wanted to recognize, obviously, her human service over the course of the years, and kind of a big deal as we march.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate that.
You know,
Way too young.
Very kind. Well, not really. It's lots of Botox, you know.
All right.
We won't take questions on that.
Are there any other questions? So it looks like a $10.8 million surplus is about 8% higher than what we required for taxes for last year, if I'm reading it right. It's about 1.35. I think the math is about 8%.
That's probably accurately close, because 1.4 million would be a one. Would be.
I'm just going to assume, because the mill rate comes up in the beginning of May. So I'm assuming that based on what we have from this number, we'll be looking at those numbers again for the April recommendation to see if we can do further adjustments to the tax increase for next year.
I'm sure we'll be working with departments, as we always do, to bring back any revisions for budget adjustments prior to the tax rate bylaw.
Okay, and then the other, I know that I had an amendment and Councillor Romansky said she could bring it forward. I'm not sure how we'd like to do this, but we can either bring forward her motion as is, or we can bring forward the basic motion, then do an amendment.
First, I would recommend the amendment, the alternative motion, let's call it, because if that passes, then we don't need to bring this one forward, but there's two parts to it, and it would be hard to amend the motion that the administration recommends. So we just would suggest bringing the alternative motion first.
Okay, and then if it fails, then go for it. The other thing was, with the amending motion, which she's going to read in a moment, it was to put $1 million towards the water reserve to help reduce the supplemental capital contributions. Do we have an idea of how much that would reduce the SCC by? I know it was last minute, so I don't know if you have those numbers.
We don't have that available, but it wouldn't be, it would be a minor amount, like a minor adjustment, based on the whole consolidation of the reserves and the budget in the 10 years.
Are there any questions? Any other things? No? We need some, okay, so Councillor Bermanski, if you wanted to bring forward the alternate motion, and we can debate that and then see where it goes from there.
Thank you. I can do that. That the 2024 municipal operating surplus estimated to be 10.8 million be allocated as follows: 1.85 million to the capital reserve, 1.85 million to the municipal land and facilities reserve, 1 million to the water reserve, and 6.1 million to the stabilization reserve. And
When
number two,
Keep going. Yeah,
okay,
keep going.
that the 2025 utility budget be adjusted for council's approval in conjunction with the annual budget amendment agenda report, which is currently scheduled for April 15th, 2025, along with any required bylaw amendments and with any rate change to be effective May 1st, 2025.
So are there any questions about that?
Well, I have a question.
Go ahead.
I mean, I respectfully, I always hate this because I don't think it provides administration enough time to provide a little bit more background that I could actually make a decision on at this time, because just to your point in your previous question, you asked if the $1 million would have any significant impact on the SCC, and a preliminary response is not really. But I kind of, and that was my inflection, sorry. So I just need more information before I could make a kind of an impact on that, because right now, I think the recommendation is sound in that it follows policy, or it follows similar, not really, but I mean, it talks about I'm looking at Diane, for everybody looking, and her face scrunched up. But I mean, I just don't. Yeah, I'm just asking, I mean, what is thank you for focusing. What's the rationale for the change versus what we have as a recommendation from administration? Thank you. Thanks for focusing me in.
I'm happy to answer it since I asked Councillor Bermanski to bring it forward.
I figured that would be.
So what we do know is that how much is currently being requested from the water fund? Like, do we have that total number of what is in the requested for the water reserve?
What's the current balance on the water reserve?
What do we need to have in that water reserve? Yeah, what's the balance now?
We'll get the current balance, and the intent is in the rate model is that at the 10-year point, that it would always be above zero.
Yeah.
We do have to caution, though, that the motion is in contravention of the utility fiscal policy. So that's why administration didn't bring that forward as a recommendation.
I knew it had to be a policy thing sooner.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect administration to bring this forward, but this is the reason why I thought is that we had collected 80% higher from tax revenue than required for various reasons. And the public would then say, okay, you collected too much. Can you give us back some money, right? And the challenge we have is that we can't do it back to the taxes, because if we did the taxes, we'll reduce it by X dollars and we'll just raise it again come next October by the same amount. So it'll be a very meaningless reduction. But the only place I could see that we could actually reduce it would be the utility SCC, because anything you put into that fund then decreases the amount required, and it decreases it in perpetuity. So that $1 million extra is more than a bonus. That's just, yes, it does decrease it by a small amount, but it decreases it by that small amount forever, because it's a 10-year rolling fund and it's a cash injection. So it's a way for us to just acknowledge that we have reduced, that we have a significant surplus. And with that, there is just a little bit of a relief to our residents that would be a permanent reduction. And that's why I brought it forward like that. But I would not expect administration to do it because of that situation. So that answer your question?
Yeah, well, it answers the question. It's almost like a debate, so I appreciate that. So that probably shortens it. But I just want to get a little bit more clarity from administration in the sense, so this does reach a policy in relation to the utility, what?
The Thule fiscal policy mentions that's the philosophy of a user pay model where the
Right.
fees are gonna compensate the revenue
Right.
collected's gonna compensate the expenses with the exception of the one grant that's approved in there.
Probably fits, yeah, thanks. I mean, but it just goes to my initial comments around, I don't have all the information. Anyways, I'll say that.
Okay. Any other, oh, Mayor, do you have a question? Or do you want to debate?
Well, no, it's a question similar to what Councillor Mackay is asking, is we're being asked to make a decision without any background, or what's this gonna affect the rates? And it used to be, and I know last year we just made the decision here in February about what we're gonna do with surplus, but we used to, maybe it's a question for Diane McMorty, or actually, I'm sure many of you would remember, we used to get the surplus as a information item. And then we were given a few weeks to propose motions on what to do with the surplus. And the reason I remember that is because I used to dig and find stuff that was just approved in that fall's operating budget. That was one time. And so we could fund that out of surplus. I'm on, and today I didn't even have a look at last fall's budget to see if there was one-time things that we could fund from surplus instead of taxes. So is there an option, instead of talking about this today, to allow council to propose motions on what to do with the surplus? And then get backgrounders?
So I would suggest we really do actually need to finalize the surplus transfer today because it's timelines for our audit. That's one of the challenges. You are correct. In the past, we did used to give a preliminary surplus much earlier. One of the challenges that we always faced is that through this year-end process, honestly, the numbers, like now they're starting to get more solid, but up until now, they're changing almost on a daily basis as we're processing year-end entries. And so one of the challenges that we faced is we would give that surplus, a month and a half or 2 months ahead of time, and then the number would significantly change and then we'd be backpedaling. So we kind of stopped, and we haven't done it for probably the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
We could probably commit to sharing an estimate sooner than the Friday before the meeting, but probably not too much before that because we mentioned things sort of change on a daily basis.
And another piece was that once the money has been placed in the reserves, council always can motion it after. And that was the conversation to then go from those reserves to action if they have a further recommendation. So the understanding, I think, was that due to the timing and having to finalize that there can always be a motion after the fact in the new year out of that reserve at any time. So this was kind of just closing that, the 24 year end, all that, and then a motion could be made in the current year to pull money out of the reserves or ongoing. And that's
Okay. Thanks. No, I'm good. As timelines was my question, and just checking my own memory banks to see that we used to do it the other way, but thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Shelley, go ahead.
Thank you. I just have one question for administration. Has there ever been a surplus this considerable in size?
I can answer that, actually. Back in 2020, we had $10.2 million. And so that was almost a 6% variance from budget. So it's fluctuated, definitely. This is tending towards the higher end than in previous years, but we have had one similar.
And it definitely is an anomaly year with just a couple assumptions significantly large impacting it. So it is definitely an anomaly year that we will considerably take into consideration, make sure things are evaluated. But when you have a couple economic factors also considering, it does result in those in some years. And the year that Brenda was referring to, that was a grant that was received.
Mhm.
Okay, and did you fund back the anomalies in other years?
Did I look back? Sorry? Is that what you said?
Did you put funding back into the things that you perhaps didn't account for, that made the budget much greater than it was, or pull from there, or, there's a reason why you have this extra amount of money, but should it not be a correction factor in where it's placed back to?
That's a great question. That's something that we considerably always evaluate, is the impact on the actuals compared to the budget. And that's why through the quarterly reporting, we're always forecasting those variances and
Right.
detailing how we're building the budgets in the future. So like interest revenue increases, we're always enabling our forecast and evaluating. That's why we're coming to council continuously with, say, the budget adjustment. We'll evaluate those adjustments, and we already would have factored those adjustments into the 25 budget.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe I'll just add to that as well too. So a lot of the times the items that are driving these large variances are sort of almost one-off anomalies for a year, and we have to be very careful about adjusting our budget on an ongoing basis. So if we use an example in a year where we had very limited snow, so we didn't do a residential snow clear and basically had $800,000 worth of savings, we don't want to assume that that's going to happen every year in the future. So we don't want to adjust the budget. That would be similar, like interest rates have been going all over the place. So that's been a bit of a challenge. Some of the permit revenue stuff, you get one big, huge development in a year, it can increase your permit revenues by huge, but you can't assume that that's going to go forward, because if we adjust those every year, then the next year it might have to go up double. If we think it's going to go down. So some of those items that really fluctuate, we try and keep our budget stable until we actually can establish an ongoing trend. And then we'll start to move the budget up or down, whichever way.
Any other questions? So Mayor, Councillor Bansky, if you want to go ahead with debate.
Okay, going to this one, or as I mentioned, this surplus is considerable, and I know we're, as mentioned by some other councillors, that it's not direct policy, but just 2 motions ago, we discussed extra charges to water and extra charges in those areas that were unprecedented or unnoticed or unexpected. And this is a very, very small amount of a very, very large excess that's transferring to help citizens, you know, in that day-to-day, the utility bills that they're paying. So I'm in support of doing this. It's one small factor of this large amount that we can return to the citizens fairly immediately. And that's the reason for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before anyone else, you said you had something?
You had asked for the balance in
Yeah.
the capital.
Yeah.
So it's just about 5 million, the uncommitted balance.
So this would actually be like a 20% reduction in
Great.
the
Can you
demand.
say that again?
5 million uncommitted.
In the capital reserve.
The capital reserve.
Sorry, you had asked for the capital reserve.
Okay, we're at 5 million uncommitted. Okay. So then this will still bring it close to 7 million. Does anybody else in debate?
I'll speak in favor of this. I think when you have a significant surplus, gives council an opportunity to think about how we can view the surplus outside the context of our standard policy, if you will. And while administration can't do that, it's open to council. I think this is a bit of an eloquent way of giving back to the community a bonus, if you will, for a good year.
Mayor Herron?
Thank you. Sheena, you probably won't be surprised where my vote's going to go on this one, because you and I have been battling this one since 2013, I believe. So I've always held a super strong personal and philosophical belief that utilities should not be subsidized by tax dollars. My tax dollars are paying for the things that you essentially can't privatize and get and get 100% cost recovery on, like transit and fire and policing and pool developments, etc. Utilities should be cost recovery. It's a commodity that people purchase in their daily lives. They can choose to purchase less or run showers for 20 minutes or half an hour and pay more. There's a usage link to your utility bill. We're taking $1 million out of a couple of reserves with this motion to lower our utility rates by, who knows, a couple of cents. I have no idea because I don't have a backgrounder, but I've been told already by administration that it's insignificant in the total grand scheme of things. But $1 million could easily fund the detailed design on the next pool that we want to build. Or it could, you know, it could build a playground. Tax dollars are for common good. And utilities should be cost recovery. So I would be upset as a resident if my tax dollars were being spent on a commodity or subsidizing a commodity that we've spent a ton of time as a council and as a city coming up with a very eloquent model that is self-funded. And so yeah, I'm going to be opposed to this motion just for the exact same reason I've been opposed to these kind of questions about putting MSI into utilities or now tax dollars. Those monies should be used for the public good and not for a commodity.
Thank you. Anyone else? I will, I realize that thank you, Councillor Baranski, for bringing this forward just because of situations that I wasn't expected to be sharing today. The reality is that whether it's utilities or it is anything else, this is all revenue that's required to run the city. And this is not being taken off of your water bill for usage. It's being taken off to help address capital projects that have been identified as related to utilities. So this is, and we've also had to increase the capital budget in water substantially because of the whole having to upgrade our pipes and having it go up by over $1 million a year for perpetuity to try to cover the pipe costs, which was a surprise. So the reality is this is not going to discourage or encourage anybody to use more or less water. This is simply about recognizing that there's capital projects, there's different categories. It's all basically the same and it comes from one wallet, which is the taxpayer's wallet. And there's no other way to share the surplus without having it just come back to them again in 6 months. This is an opportunity for us to say, this is the largest surplus that we've ever seen, certainly in the time that I've been here. I don't think there has been any that have hit 10.8 million. We're still giving the vast majority of it, less than 10% is going back into other reserves. And you can say it may not be significant, but significant is all in the eye of the beholder. If it's several dollars a month and that equals up to $40 less a year, it's $40 less a year that we can say, you know what, we gave something back. Because the tax increase, we had a tax increase last year and we overcollected by 8%. We could have had a 0% tax increase and we still would have had a surplus. So to me, saying that you can't, this has to be, we should not have utilities subsidized by taxes, and yet we raised the franchise fee and had our taxes be subsidized by utilities. So the reality is that we can do this quite easily and we can still achieve all the other goals that we're trying to do. And it's something that we can tell residents that we did something to recognize that this surplus is enough that we can share it. So that's what I thought. Do you have anything else to close, Councillor Grant?
My only comment was what you just mentioned, subsidizing taxes with franchise fees, which is essentially charging utilities for taxes. So again, I think it's balancing the books for the citizens and providing something back. It's people are struggling right now, and whether it's a few cents, few dollars, monthly, a few dollars, every bit helps immensely at this particular time. So hope to get support on this one. Thank you.
Yeah, call for the vote. So that passes with Councillor Killick, Bermanski, Hughes, and Broadhead. Complete memory lapse in favor, and Councillor Mackay and Mayor Herron opposed. Do we have anything else? So we don't need the other motion. Do we have anything else on the agenda that I need to be aware of? All right, then meeting adjourned. Thank you.
We have pizza.
Thank you.
Also, I need.
Have it. Send it to you. Yeah.